Welcome back to Self Love and Sweat, the podcast. Today, we have such a wonderful guest. I'm so excited to connect with again, Paddy Kennedy. I met Paddy when I was in Dubai recently, supporting my ex-boyfriend on his future business endeavors in Dubai and kind of getting a taste of Dubai life. And we just met some really wonderful people, had such a great experience there. And honestly, Paddy, after I met you and we had coffee and we just kind of chatted for an hour, the three of us, I remember after that conversation being like, oh, that's why I came to Dubai. Like, of course, I was there to help Andreas and support him in that journey. And then I was also working, running my business, helping him. And when I met you, it was like such a breath of fresh air. And I was like, oh, I'm so grateful for your time, for the time we got to talk, for kind of the crossover in terms of what we're interested in, what our passion is in this world. And so, yeah, I'm excited to have you here on the podcast so everyone can get a little dose of Paddy. Paddy, you're not from Dubai. You are, yeah, I think you said you're from Canada, right? You're
I'm
Canadian.
from
Like, tell us a little
Vancouver,
bit more.
beautiful West
Yeah,
Coast, Vancouver. Yeah.
tell us more about you and your coaching mission and what you do and how you ended up in Dubai.
Well, first of all, let me say I'm really excited to be here too, because I very much enjoyed that day that we met. I felt like I had met a kindred soul, a kindred spirit. And that's always so refreshing because there's so many people in the world and people talk a big talk, but I just felt that in talking to you, I had found somebody who was going to walk that talk. And for me, that's just so refreshing. So thank you for having me today. Yes, I am a wayward, nomadic Canadian. I just love Canada, but I have a very hard time living there. I don't know why. I'm just always on the road. So I have been this time, it's been 4 years now that I've been out, a couple of years in Oman, and very difficult to get work in Oman, to get a visa and whatnot. I work for myself. And so I came to Dubai, which I never really thought I would. I thought Dubai is just like another great big desert city, like a great big Las Vegas. But boy, I'm really glad I came here because first of all, you can live your life like you would anywhere in the world, even though it is an Islamic country. It's very wide open, as you experience, is very, very safe. And about 89% of the people here are, in fact, expats. So we're all in this boat together. It's like a city of dreamers. And we've all come with a big dream, and we are bodacious enough or audacious enough to think that, yeah, let's do it here. So I love it. I am a coach. I started out, okay, so I'm moving on in my years now. Young at heart, not so much in all the other places. I have been coaching, it's 52 years now. I started out in my late teens at 19 as an athletic coach. I had been a competitive figure skater in Canada. And when I retired, when I missed the Olympic team, I then became a coach and was coaching competitive skaters. I ended up very disabled. I was born with a disability, but nobody really knew what it was. And so they put me into sports as a kid, because they thought, well, that would be the best thing. And I gave it my best shot. And as I say, competed until I missed the team. And then I started coaching. But even by that point now, being in the cold rink, and you've got to be on the ice. You know, they give hockey players the great ice time. They give figure skaters the bad ice time. So you had to be on the ice at 5 or 6 in the morning. And I found my body was just breaking down. And I ended up really quite seriously disabled. And I didn't really know what to do, because all I had ever done since I was 10 was train. I mean, if the truth be told, I went to school half days from grade 7 on, because, you know, I was going to the Olympics. And even if you didn't get to the Olympics in those days, in the 60s, my mom was paying $10 an hour for lessons. That was a lot of money. So, you know, I'm what they call a triple gold medalist. I'm very highly qualified. And so we all knew that the coaching business was going to be where I would end up. And if my mom was paying $10 an hour way back then, I thought, well, by the time I'm ready to turn pro, it'll be double that. And it was. But I couldn't do it because I just found it increasingly difficult. So then I was like, well, now what do I do? I mean, really. So I had a teacher, I'm giving you the Reader's Digest version. I won't give you all the time from when I lost it to when I found it again. But when I was in grade 11, I had a teacher, Sister Mary Carmel was her name, God love her. And she said to me, now, in case this skating thing doesn't work out, like should anything happen to you, you're a very good writer and you're a very good speaker. And you should always keep that in your back pocket.
Mhm.
Now, my mom raised 4 kids as a single mom in those years, very tough. And she used to say, every night after dinner, we would have elocution, public speaking. They would have dinner, would put the dishes in the sink. And then she had 4 kids, so there were 5 of us, including her. And she would give us a topic and we had to stand up and speak.
Cool.
And she would, because there were 5 of us, we had to create limericks and we had to speak in poetic rhyme. And she used to say, by God, no one will know my kids come from the wrong side of the tracks. And by saying it, she sounded so on the wrong side of the tracks. But we all grew up to be very strong in communication. So I tried for a number of years, I tried many ways to fulfill, skating was an art sport. So much expression, you put the music on and away you go. It's every cell in your body. And it was very difficult to replace that. But people had always said to me too, you have a really good voice for radio.
Mhm.
I was never certain if that meant I didn't really have the face for TV or what it meant. But my mom had said forever, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So I went in 1990, I decided no matter how sick I get, I always have my voice. I'm going to go into radio school. And on the very first day, so I went to the National Institute of Broadcasting in Toronto, in Canada. And on the very first day, what do you think it said on the blackboard there? It's not what you say, but how you say it. And I thought, oh, Mom, we always kind of a little embarrassed because she was so different from all the other moms. She encouraged us to follow our art and to express ourselves. But there she was. So that was the beginning of what now has become an international career as a coach obviously in communication, presentation, public speaking, leadership. And all of my work, I involve the magnificent instrument of the human voice. And so that's kind of how I got here. I never intended to come here. I was to speak in Bahrain. I left. I had been in Muscat. I went home for Christmas. I came back. I was to go to Bahrain to give a 3-day seminar. And by the time I got here back in the Middle East, they had closed everything down because of this thing called COVID. And I was in Oman and you had to stay where you were. And that went on for months. By the time they lifted it, it was getting winter in Canada. I thought, like, who really? Even Vancouver's nice, but really, when you're winter in the Middle East, winter in Canada, I'm picking the Middle East. And by then I had an apartment and whatnot. And then one thing just became another, and I haven't been back since. And now I'm living in Dubai. And that's the Reader's Digest story of how this crazy Canuck got all the way here to Dubai, and I love it.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing. And I said this before we pressed record, and then now that we're recording, I'll say it again. When I heard your voice again after meeting you in Dubai, it was kind of like, oh, this like landing safe, grounded sound, vibration, instrument, as you mentioned. And I know that in your coaching, you teach your clients, communication skills and kind of all the things. I love the way that your mom kind of set the stage for that when you were younger, because I know that's like a huge fear of a lot of people, is speaking in front of people, being able to communicate clearly and with connection and clear thoughts and articulation. And I think what a beautiful, dessert, if you will, like post-meal kind of setup she created there. I never thought of that as a kid. I was always, I would say, doing that without being prompted. My mom did hair out of our house, and I was like, just by default of wanting to be like, I would do, recite poems, do dances, like be the entertainment there. And I remember, in fact, I just shared a meme on social media about this on Instagram. I think it was today or yesterday, but like, shout out to the girls who were always labeled as the talker in school. Or I remember my teachers would just be like, she gets her work done, then she's just talking. We got to like put her outside and have her desk out there sometimes because she's like interrupting other students, right? So that kind of story of being the talker. And I remember being told to by like my soccer coaches and sports coaches, like go run laps, because I like wouldn't stop talking and I'd be engaging with other people. I also I think I'm a pretty fast talker now, but I definitely was way faster before becoming aware of it. And so just kind of that story existed for me, right? And then I remember through, and I know we talked about this as well during coffee, is through that healing and working in journey and learning how to communicate and understanding ourselves even more, our voice changes. We learn how to use like the tonality and pitch, the vibration can change. I think we talked about people you'd worked with before who maybe have a really high voice up here, but then when they come into their power, they start to understand kind of that full bodiness, if you will, of the voice. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, because I noticed that about myself, of course, while preserving what is uniquely Lunden and my voice and my presence and things like that, but also through a lot of the work-ins and healing through what was communicated or not communicated growing up, or what through, excavation I needed to talk about and share and bring to light. I definitely noticed that change in myself. And so maybe we can, talk a little bit about that, the changes of our voice as we heal and grow.
It's really interesting, that you kept being put outside for speaking or having to run laps for speaking, because this is such a travesty that we do to women, to girls. We tell them to shh, shh. And so now a big part of my work is telling women, you don't have to shh anymore. I'm not going to tell you to hush. I'm going to tell you to speak up. So it's very interesting. You have a really good, strong, clear personality, but you also, like me, had health issues, right? And there's reasons, physical reasons for them, but it's also a lot the way we internalize what happens to us in our lives, right? But the thing about voice, and I work with men and women, but I'm very passionate about working with women with voice, because so many times they've been told to hush. We've been socialized. It doesn't matter what culture. I mean, I'm now in the Muslim culture, but I've had women clients from 124 countries. They've all been, if they're loud, they're told to hush. And if they aren't loud, it's because they were told that good girls don't speak up. Good girls should just look pretty, be seen. And if you're married, agree with your husband. Now, thank goodness that the world is changing. So a lot of the work I do is I say to women, and you'd be shocked, I say, well, why aren't you speaking up? Who stole your voice? This is a very common question. Whoa, out come the floodgates. So many young girls and young women, or things happen to them, could be a sexual assault or some kind of something. And if you ever say a word of this to anybody, and then the threat comes, so they learn right away, zip. So then when they finally get to speak, they're nervous. They don't trust themselves. They're completely lacking self-love, because for years and years, they've been giving into this concept that I don't really have anything to say. It's best for me just to be quiet. And this can be really accomplished women, by the way. It's not just, I'm not talking about little mousy little girl women. I'm talking like really accomplished women. Maybe I'm talking too much. We have this thing. So that's one of the first things, like to uncover. We don't really need to find our voice because we don't lose it. But women especially, men to some extent, but not as much because of the socialization, we tend to have, it's like we bury it up. We bury it. We cover it up. Well, I won't say that. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that. And then when women get into the corporate world or the business world and they speak up at a meeting, sometimes they get laughed at, sometimes they get ridiculed. Who does she think she is? Here she goes again. And after a while, they just quit talking. I mean, statistics and studies show that about 75% of the time, when women are in the minority, we will remain silent. I'm passionate about stopping that one right now. So that's number one about voice and speaking. And good for you that you kept your personality alive and strong. And it sounds like your mom was letting you do that, letting you recite poetry and whatnot. Because if your mom or at home, if they had said, shh, and then you were being put outside in the classroom, and then you would not be able to speak as you are, because it just layers it up. So that's number one, is in my work. That's my big passion, is to help women. I'm working with a woman right now, so accomplished. And we're doing some leadership, authentic leadership work. So authentic leadership is really knowing your own story and where do you get your strengths. So I asked her this first question: how do you articulate the meaning and purpose of your life? Now, this woman is so accomplished that when she started with me, I thought, what's she doing? I mean, she's so good. When I asked her that question, she couldn't talk. Tears flooded down her face. I was like, what? She said, well, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, accomplished beyond what most women are, right? So it's in all stages. And then the voice, of course, she goes to work and everybody speaks over her. But not anymore, because we've been working now on the instrument. So the first thing we do, we work on the courage, the bravery. It takes guts to stand up and stand in your truth and speak to the world from your place of truth, and not somebody else's, or not some borrowed truth. And that affects the sound of the voice. So the first thing I want people, men go through this as well, but with women, I really work hard on this, that they get that courage, that bravery. And then we play the instrument. Richard Strauss, one of the great musical Strauss family members, said that the human voice is the most magnificent of all the instruments, but it's the most difficult to play. And it's the most difficult to play because it's at once a wind instrument, like an oboe, because a great voice happens when the right amount of air comes across the right amount of vocal cords. But it's also like your Stradivarius violin or a guitar, because it's the vibration, that what you do with that air. And it's the air that makes the sound, but then it's the vibration. So if you were to play a violin or a guitar that wasn't pulled tight, there'd be no vibration. So it's the mastery of that instrument. Now, here's the magic. You see, I mean, I've been studying voice now since 1990, and I still study it because I'm so fascinated. It's an art. I chose radio. When I went to school, it was radio or TV, and I chose radio because it's an art. The sound. When you are speaking from your truth, when you're in your heart and your soul, and you speak, the vibrational quality of your voice actually can go into your audience's brains, and it ignites, it sparks imagination. And the vibrational quality of the voice can go into your listener's brain and start new synapses, create new pathways, which means now that your audience is thinking about what you're saying in a way they've never thought of before. This is a superpower. If you're in sales, you ought to learn how to play this instrument, because yes, you could manipulate it any which way you want. I'm only interested in manipulating it for the good, for the greater good. But you have such control, and you can really make people think differently. It's an amazing gift. The poet, when I was in school, God, I hated him. What's his name? Longfellow, Wordsworth, Longfellow. I still, whatever. He's a very famous poet from way back when. And he said that the human voice is the organ of the soul. Mm-hmm. That when we speak and when we're in our truth, because when you're not in your truth, your voice is going to show. A voice expert could tell. They say the eyes are the windows to the soul. I've known people look me right in the eye, tell me a big fat whopper, big fat lie. But the voice will quiver. when it lies. It is, in fact, the organ of the soul. I believe that we don't have souls. I believe that we are souls. So when we get into our truth and our beauty and our goodness, and we speak, we can change the world. We can increase our business. There's so much we can do just by taking that bravery, knowing you got to know who you are. You got to know your truth. So you got to do some deep dive in there, and you got to do some self-reflecting, because the moment you're holding back, see what happens to my voice when I raise my shoulders? It gets thin, gets tinny. Any stress in here, as soon as I lower them, I can get back into my register. So if I go to speak and I'm doubting myself and there's any tension, it's going to come out, and then people will go, yeah, there's just something about her that I just didn't really, I don't know what it is. It was because the voice sounded like tin. So really, and when men have, this is another place where men have it more easy than we do, because they have a naturally deeper, more resonant voice. A lot of women, they get that kind of, that girly voice, and and then they're tense, or they're not really saying what they want to say, and they're holding back. Muddy thinking, if you're not clear, it'll come out in the sound. It's your superpower. I'm telling you, honest.
Yeah, I love what you shared. And I can think of, and I'm sure people listening too can think of and have examples of exactly what you mentioned, of moments where there is uncertainty in our voice or someone that we're listening to, or even moments where we just, like what you just said, I'm not really sure about that person, but something, I don't know. And it's not that every day people know, oh yeah, their register was not, penetrating my brain in the way that it could. It's just like, there's just something off that we can recognize as other humans
we
interacting with
feel
other.
it. It's not
Yeah.
really a thought, because it's a vibration. We feel it.
Mhm.
And that's the thing. And so we can't really, I don't know what it is. Excuse me, I don't know what it is, but it just doesn't feel right. I don't get the vibe. I mean, we have all that language for it, right?
Yep. Yeah, I don't get that I don't get the vibe, or they didn't vibe well with me. That's such the kind of inner feeling in terms of language.
Yeah.
So one of the things in communication that I have found, just be really helpful in my own life and in the lives of my clients, um, is the integration and communication about ways you no longer wish to be, who you are now that you're changing and healing, and those conversations with people that we love, that we work with, that we're around on a regular basis, so that they can continue to get to know who we're becoming, right? Like this, okay, I'm changing, new story, I'm the DJ, I'm changing the song, I'm becoming, growing, all the things. And how do we communicate that to people that we love, whether they stay in that chapter of our lives or they don't? And one of the things that I've noticed is, specifically with two clients that I've worked with and am working with, is they've really worked on the communication. The delivery is good. They're speaking up in a way that they wouldn't have before, in a way that feels congruent with who they are and who they want to be. But then still that lingering feeling, probably from, like you mentioned, who stole your voice, like that story. But there's still that moment where it's like, oh, I'm still thinking about it. And this is why I think communication is so powerful, because it's not just the conversation, the communication, what you say, but as humans, our thinking brain later of like, did I say something weird? Was that too much? Was that not enough? And a lot of those stories, I think, can still be there while the volume starts to turn down, while we're still showing up to have the conversation, to communicate and connect. So what are some of the tools or strategies that you use that are helpful to like bridge that, of like, okay, I'm having the conversation, I'm using my instrument, and there's still like these lingering limiting beliefs, or things that could help that, make me feel a little uncertain or insecure? Like, how do we do that at the same time, step up and share our voice, and kind of turn down the extra peanut gallery
Noise. Yeah, that the critic, generally it's a critic,
yeah
right?
yeah
which takes me to, I think, the first point that I would want to make. I don't know what scientists, so some social scientists do these studies. I don't know how they do it, but it is a fact that we have most of the conversations in our life are with ourselves.
Mm.
Talk more to ourselves than we do to anybody.
Yeah.
And this is the part I don't figure out, but many studies say that at least 85% of that self-talk is negative.
Mm-hmm.
And we do that through repetition. Oh, you idiot. Oh, you're so stupid. Oh, what was I thinking? Oh, I'm such an idiot. All those, and we don't even know that we do them. I'm so fat. I don't know why I can't do this. I'm going to feel like a fool. All this negative stuff that we repeat over and over and over. So the subconscious mind, which is not capable of making a decision, the subconscious mind can't say, don't say that. Whatever you tell the subconscious mind, it's going to go, okay, I'm an idiot. Okay, I'm an idiot. And if we tell ourselves that enough, this is how we establish our paradigms. Well, they come through repetition. So we've got to flip that narrative. We've really, so in the days when I was really sick, and the doctor said, you're never going to work again, and I bought into it, hook, line, and sinker. And you better believe I was sick. And then I realized, like, this can't go on, because the real Paddy in me was like, I don't believe that. There was something like what you had too. There's something, and it's in all of us. If we really get deep and honest with ourselves, wait a second, I don't buy that. And I came to a point where I realized, okay, you're not disabled, you are differently abled. Began to flip the narrative, right? Began to look at myself differently. Well, what do I bring to the table? And so I began to really change the way that I was talking about myself. And that's the beginning of it. And it takes work. Like, we can't decide, tonight at 8 o'clock, okay, I'm never going to say that to myself again, and presto, it's gone. No, because it's taken years and years and years of repeating that stuff, ourselves and the outside world telling us that. You're such a dreamer. That'll never work. What are you thinking? All those things. And if we don't act as gatekeepers and keep them out, they're going to come in. And that's a skill that we have to learn. So that's number one, like, really become aware. And you know what I did? I did the old-fashioned style of cognitive restructuring. I got an elastic. So nowadays I have these nice little beaded bracelets that are elastic, but sometimes I still have to do it. But I got an elastic band, and every time I heard myself in that negative talk, I'd snap the elastic. And it would come back and it would pinch a little bit. And in that moment of pain, a little tiny itty bitty pain, I'd go, oh, and I'd flip it, say the opposite. So instead of saying, I'll never be able to do it, I'd snip and I'd go, yeah, I can do that. This is easy, I can do it. And I just began to do that. It was just cognitive restructuring, which now it's very much more advanced. But in those days, when I was first hearing about it many years ago, 30 years ago, a doctor said, just put an elastic around your wrist, and every time you hear yourself dissing yourself, snap it. So that was really the beginning. Now, what I do with my clients is I came up with this quite by accident when I was in New York years ago, and I was working with young girls. Who were young, mainly Black and Hispanic girls, who were young girls at risk, and it was an after-school program. And I came in as the communication coach. And I thought, well, I'm just going to set it up this way, and they're going to give speeches, and then I learned right away. It was just after 9/11. So I realized right away, like, they're not ready for this. And I remember one day, they're not ready. Like, I can't say, okay, write a speech about this. They had no idea. They were just in the soup trying to figure out how to get through each day. They were all girls at risk, right? And I remember one day, a young woman, she became my poet extraordinaire, my poet laureate in the group. She came in, and she'd been beaten up at school by some boys. And I said to her, what happened? And she was Muslim, little Muslim girl, a lot of Muslims in the Black community, especially in Harlem. And she said, I was beaten up by these boys. And I said, why? And she said, they called me bin Laden's daughter and they beat me up. And, just stupid. And I remember from the classroom, I could look down the west side. And I remember too, you could see where the Trade Center towers had been and they were gone. And they were more obvious gone than they were when they were there, because when they were there, you just saw them all the time. And so I was 145th Street in Harlem and looking all the way to downtown. And I thought, how can I get these girls so that when they go out there, they will not get knocked off their feet? And somehow it came to me, they have to know what they hold to be true, beautiful, and good. I don't know where it came from, but I'm so grateful. So what I did is I told this legend from the west coast of Canada, Native people, called the legend of Sisiulo. He's the two-headed snake sea monster, and he can live he lives in water, and he can live in salt water. He can live in your tears, and he'll come at you, and he'll suck your face, and he'll just suck the soul right out of you. So when you see Sisiulo, you should stand firm, and in that moment declare your truth. So I performed this, and they all looked at me like, this lady is nuts. And I thought, okay, well, I didn't get that. But I said, that was a story about standing firm and telling your truth. So get a piece of paper. Now listen up, anybody, because this is I make all my clients still do this. Now, those girls, I made 5 to 7 minutes. I'm surprised they still like me. They're all women now. But I said, okay, finish this sentence. These things about me I know to be true. No editors allowed. Stream of consciousness writing. Even if you don't believe it, write it and start each sentence with I am. It was the beginning of my I am exercise. I am strong. I am beautiful. I am bright. And I got them to repeat that over and over, and every day they had to do it. They had to write it and keep that, and they had to declare it. After they wrote it, then I'd say, okay, stand up, and I'd nod, and I'd say, please stand up and declare to the world what you know about yourself to be true. And they would. And they just got going. And then I'd have this, could you please evaluate her? And they, what do you mean? I said, did her body language, her face, was it congruent with the words? And I didn't think she really believed it when she said that she was beautiful, but I think she's beautiful, don't you? And you just watch these girls. And then I got them talking about beauty and about their own inherent beauty. And then in the same process, stream of consciousness writing, then stand up, declare to the world. And then their innate goodness and what's good in the world and what's good about them. And this went on and on and on for years. And, after a while, like this organization always used to call in keynote speakers every year at the gala, but they didn't, because they just called the girls that were graduating. And do you know that all of those girls in that class went on to university? Many of them won full scholarship all the way through their master's degrees. Do you know that there was not one teen pregnancy I think in the whole time, still, I think that they can probably say that those girls learned to go out there into that mean old city that was ready to beat them up and say, because they knew who they were. And so and I would suggest you do this with your clients. Now, when I give a workshop, it's the I am, got to do the I am exercise. I have full-grown women, accomplished women, who, when they do I am, they start crying because they've never talked about themselves in that way. They've never declared it. So I say, you just get that every morning, take 5 minutes of your day and write I am. And even if you don't believe it, write it. I didn't know this is an ancient practice that goes back to biblical times. I didn't know that. I always think I'm inventing things, and then I find out that they're really old. There's no original thought. We just get connected. And after they write it, they declare it. And so now I say, take that in your pocketbook or your purse. And when you're at work, if anybody comes after you, your nemesis or whatever, you just go into that bathroom and you whip out that sheet. And you can either, if it's good to say it out loud in front of the mirror, perfect. If not, read it. and read it anytime you have to. And it's amazing what it does. And then I asked them, the next one is, because, I found out recently, I was speaking on a big event, global thing, we were online, and the woman who spoke before me said that she had this statistic that when asked, only 4% of women believe that they're beautiful. Like what, the other 96% of us are walking around thinking we're ugly? And it's because we're all so misconstrued by this outside the fashion world of, you got to be skinny as can be, and you got to be this, and you got to be that, and you got to be blonde hair, blue eyed, or whatever. It's all so complicated. So now I say, I love the beautiful way in which and then I make them write it. And then I ask them to please stand up and declare it. And full-grown, strong women weep when they do this, because they've never, ever allowed themselves to think of themselves in that way. So for me, ask, how do we flip that narrative? It's deep. It's deep. That's why my program is called Your Brave Voice, because you got to get into your deep bravery, your deepest truth, the one where nobody criticizes you. And even if you don't believe it, if you say it enough, if you repeat it enough, you get rid of the old stuff and fill it with the new repetitions. It's got to be repeated. Oh, I'm such a lecturer. I'm so sorry, London. I'm such a lecturer. Just go on.
So nourishing. I love the way it sounds and the way that it feels. But yeah, that repetition is so important and so powerful. And I think that's kind of that aha moment where we realize it is a programming. Like we think it's just us and the way that we are, but when we choose to do it differently and put up a cone here and start to build that new pathway and do the construction, it's like it just ends up becoming more of who we are. And I love the declaration, the like you said, just stream of consciousness, putting it on paper, whatever might come out, which I think is so beautiful, because sometimes it comes out and then you're like, wait, what? Huh? In both directions, actually. In terms of what we think is beautiful about ourselves, but then also to the snap of the elastic that you mentioned of those thoughts. Sometimes I'll write down even if I just feel it, sometimes I just feel like I need to clear the filter and just get real about the shit I've been talking to myself and writing down a lot of the negative thoughts, and also the I ams, the more affirmative, the more empowering things. And that deep process that you mentioned, that get real process is real, because sometimes I'm like, oh, damn, I didn't know I thought that about myself, or, oh, damn, I think that about myself, kind of in both directions, to create that container to decide what we're going to say, how to declare it, and letting the emotions come with it. I think that's been the most important part about using my voice and communicating and connecting, is being able to use words in a way that just are more connected, are more clear about how I feel and what that might look like, instead of just being an explosion all the time, having more clarity and flow. And like you said, this is who I am. This is how I will be treated. This is not how I will be treated. And stepping into that declaration embodiment, I think, has been so helpful and so powerful on my healing journey and all of that. And the repetitions are everything. And I love that you also brought up a lot of our thoughts are repeated and they're negative, and we're not even realizing that programming and that autopilot. And I see the same thing too. I mean, in myself and also people that I work with, where it's these are badass, amazing humans who are stepping up, declaring, being vulnerable, and letting that emotion come along with it, so that we can process. It's not always just a matter of saying and believing, but sometimes it's saying and feeling and releasing and all of that, and doing that in community with a coach or in front of other women or people in community that are doing that too. It's I find that what you mentioned as well, about beauty being the way that you look and whatever, but I feel the more I don't know, get naked internally, and I'm around other people who do that too, that's when I realized people are beautiful. I'm like looking at people who are sharing their truth and are shedding tears and layers in ways they never did before. And like the look in that person's eyeballs is like the most beautiful thing ever, more than, I don't know, what contour concealer they might have used or what eyelash extensions might have elongated their whatevs. I was just recently in a group and we did kind of that eye gazing where you just sit and look at each other in the eyes and don't say anything. And at the end, after having done some deep work together throughout the course of a couple days, we were just like, oh, everyone's so beautiful. Not because of what they look like, but like what they were able to expose and share through that healing journey and connectedness and communication and all the things, which I think you and I both agree there in terms of that being what's really sexy and attractive and beautiful and needs more of in this world.
Yeah, because it's real. It's not fabricated. It's real. I mean, it's real, raw, authentic people, you know, not hiding and just being who they are. It is a beautiful thing. Beautiful. Brings me to tears sometimes when I see them. I mean, I wish I could talk about some of these women, the jobs they have, because if people knew the jobs they have, but I can't, right, because of confidentiality, but very high up jobs. And there they are, these, it sounds terrible, but it's so beautiful when they cry. It's so beautiful because it's a cleansing. It's an aha. Wow, I really am compassionate, beautiful, wise, strong, tender. I really am, or the beautiful way in which I, whatever it is. And that when you see them have tears, I get teary-eyed, and it sounds really twisted, but in private sessions or even in group sessions, when they cry, I feel like we're on the right path, because it's a release of pent up emotion and self, you know, I think we are here to learn self-love. I think that's the whole purpose of being a human being. And I think learning to love ourselves is the most difficult job there is.
Yeah.
I remember once I blew it in the class, and I in the moment my intention was not to get near the edge of my integrity, but I did. I said something. I don't even really remember what it was, but I remember the client's face because we were on Skype in those days. And she said to me, good for her, she said, I feel like you're a little bit out of your integrity saying that. I thought I was going to die. I'm only telling you because it's we got to be honest. And I was in Vancouver at the time, and I went down to the beach, and I was just like wound up. And then I said, because in Vancouver, we have these big logs on the beach. So I'm sitting on a log, and I said, okay, stop it. How are you going to love yourself through this? Well, that's a good question. And I learned so much that I've never gotten anywhere near making that kind of mistake again, because I was horrified. And the old Paddy would, see, you're such an idiot. Yeah, you know, you always knew, because everybody, yeah, it's right what they say. You don't know what you're doing. You're an imposter. All that garbage that comes in, right? And I just said, no, how am I going to love myself through this? And it was a turning point.
Love that. Some good questions I wrote down today that you talked about. Who stole your voice? How are you going to love yourself through this? I like that. I think sometimes I don't know, I am amazing, I love me are sometimes not enough words to really like be on board with it. And that really resonates. Like, how are you going to love yourself through this instead of letting the autopilot chatter of what, you know, tries to bring us down?
And I can only bring it up today in front of your audience because I learned how to love myself through it. If I hadn't, I would never tell it because I'd still be hiding it.
Yeah.
Right. But there's no need to hide it. What a great lesson. I'm happy to share it.
And thank you so much, Paddy. Thank you for not hiding, for being who you are. I'm so grateful the way that we got connected through like a mutual friend, in a way where when he mentioned you have to meet Paddy, I was like, okay. And then when I met you, I was like, oh yeah, absolutely, had to.
Yeah.
And so grateful to know you and have gotten to know you more in this time together and in the future. So yeah, I am so grateful for your time. If there's anything else you wanted to share that you feel called to share before we close, and then also what's the best way for my listeners if they wanted to join one of your programs or attend one of your coaching things, how could they best get connected with you?
I'll answer that one last. The thing I
Okay.
want to say first is we all need to cut ourselves some slack. We are only human beings. We cannot be anything more or less than human beings. So this whole notion of trying to be perfect, trying to get rid of it. If you want to sabotage yourself, aim for perfection, because you're never going to make it. So I really want people to remember, just cut yourself some slack, like just chill. You're okay. As a skater, as a figure skater, we learn by falling. You fall enough times, I'm not doing that jump that way again because it hurts. And the first thing we teach children are two very important lessons. We teach them how to stop and we teach them how to fall. It's the first thing you teach when you teach kids how to skate is how to fall. Because hey, and when you fall, you get up, you keep going. So cut yourself some slack and love yourself to the best you can, and understand that, you know, some days are great, some days not so great. It's okay. We're all, nobody is more special than anyone else. I'm turning 71 in 2 weeks, and I'm still doing my cognitive restructuring. I still have the elastic. As I said, now they're pretty with beads. I don't go around with a big ugly elastic on. But there are times I'm here alone in Dubai. I'm a widow. People, I get in the cab driver talks to me and he says, "Why aren't you home living with your son? You have no right being in the world. You're old." I don't believe it, but it takes me back to one time when my son said, "Why can't you just be like all the other moms and live at home in Canada?" I said, "Have you ever met your mother?" We've been in certain countries because of me, because of our travels. So that's the thing. We're just doing our best every day. Give it your best. Some days your best is brilliant. Some days your best sucks. But just give it, even if your best means, like I haven't done my exercises today. And I'm like, "You didn't do your," shut up already. Walk in the evening. It's only 29 degrees. It's winter here. It's lovely. So cut yourself some slack, be tender with yourself, use the same tone of voice you use to your loved ones, use it with you. You would never talk to a child with the same tone of voice that you would talk sometimes to yourself. So talk with love to yourself. That's the one. And if you want to find out, you see my name right there, Paddy Kennedy. I'm named after my grandfather. All the other Paddy Kennedys on social media are boys, men. I am the only female Paddy Kennedy. So if you ever go, if you can remember my name and it's Paddy spelled with 2 D's like an Irishman, then you'll always find me. I have a fairly decent, LinkedIn, I'm Paddy Kennedy. Facebook, I'm Paddy Kennedy. You'll always find me through just that way. I don't have a little thing to show you, the little Q code. I don't have that.
No, we
So
don't
much.
need that. We'll just link your, put your name in the description of the podcast and people can find and connect with
And
you.
you have my email address. You could put my email address because I do like email. I'm old fashioned that way, but that's why, because I can keep track. WhatsApp, there's too many messages, right? You spend all your time scrolling up and down. So yes, that's how you catch me.
Yeah, LinkedIn, Facebook. Cool. I'll link that all in the show notes. Paddy, thank you so much for your time and for inspiring us to use our instrument. I appreciate you. And thank you guys for listening.
Thank you. Thank you.